I'm going to offer a talk for people in the 12-step program, that is, people who are recovering from addictions. Now, I'm not in the program, although I've been a part of the program for 10 years, listening to fifth steps, and I used to take women from a prison to their meetings. And so the title of this talk is Applying the 12 Steps to One's Life. Really we want to put the 12 steps into action in our lives. And I remember when I used to take the women to their meetings, is that at the end it was almost like a cheerleading. People would say, keep working the steps. Keep working the steps. In other words, if you work the steps, you can maintain your sobriety. Now, the question we might ask ourselves is, after I've been in the program for so long, why do I have to keep working the steps? Once I've gone through step 12, do I get my graduation diploma? The answer is no. You have to keep working the steps, or you fall into the trap of being a dry drunk. Now, what is a dry drunk? A dry drunk is someone who no longer has an addictive substance as part of their life, and yet they still have the same dysfunctions as an addict. And so you have to continue to work the steps. We have to continue to be part of the program so we don't fall into this category. But the other thing, though, is if you continue to work the steps, the first part is really to let go of our addictive substance, but then the second part is really to become a better human being, or to become the human being that we always were, and we're just living out of that. But if we follow those steps, we will lead a path of happiness. Now, we'd have to be crazy to not want to live a happy life. That's really the desire and the longing of everyone. And so the steps will actually lead us to a happy life. Now, of course, happiness can be attached to an emotion, but maybe a better way to say it is I can be content. I might have the most miserable day, but I can be content in my life, content with where I am at, how things are going. Chances are when we're caught up in an addiction, we are not content, and we are by no means happy. And so we can simplify it that, are you happy? Are you content? And if you say no, then what needs to change? Obviously, something needs to change if you want to lead a path of contentment or happiness. If you say no, I am happy, or I'm content, then just keep going as you are. But chances are there's always something that we need to work on so we can become a more content person or a happier person. It's not something that we stop. Now, if we look at the principles of the 12 steps, they also give us an indication that this truly is a path to happiness. If we even just look at the fifth step, is to live a life of integrity and to trust another human being. And really, as you disclose what you disclose, you are allowing that human being to be compassionate towards you, to accept you as you ought to accept yourself. So I'd like to go through the steps one by one and show how, if we apply this step to our lives, how we can live a life of being at peace and being happy. So the first step is really focusing on honesty. We admitted we are powerless over alcohol or whatever other addiction we're dealing with, that our lives have become unmanageable. Usually it's from within that an addict will say, okay, something needs to change. I need to park the bus. I need to live a different life. People can explain to the addict over and over that, man, you need to change, or woman, you need to change, and nothing changes. But when it comes from within, my life has become unmanageable. I need to do something different. It's really a process of surrender, and it's also being honest with oneself. Now, this can be likely the hardest step, but it can also be the most rewarding, because you know that your life is only going to get better as you continue to work the steps. In step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now, this is to believe in the God of our understanding. Now, it's not to say that you fully believe in God or that you've got God all figured out. It's that the God that you understand. And even if you're not quite sure, the whole point of this step is to get outside of ourselves, to focus on something outside of ourselves. Because the big challenge that the big book mentions to us is selfishness. And if we get too selfish, we get too self-absorbed, it's hard for us to continue to work the steps. So focusing on a power greater than ourselves can help us overcome that, even if we're not full-on believers. And the third step, this is really an act of faith. We make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. Now, once again, we recognize that the path that I was going before was not working so well, and so I'm willing to try something different. It's recognizing that the God that I understand is a God who will help me to live a better life. In other words, God is on my side. The fourth step is obviously something that's very applicable to our lives, because we're going to take a pen and paper and we're going to write and reflect. I remember once hearing a fifth step, and the gentleman brought a binder that was that thick, and I thought certainly he didn't write on every single page in that binder. He did, and his fifth step took around 4.5 hours, I believe, but we did take a 20-minute little break. But it's the time to be just fearless. It's the time to just take that fearless moral inventory, to have that courage to go where you prefer not to go. But this is really a time and a very obvious step where you are applying your time, applying your efforts to reflect on your life. Really to see how possibly the pattern of your life led to your addiction or led to you leading a destructive life. Now, the fifth step is a step that you may want to bypass, but you are easily applying this step. Admitting to God, to oneself, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, you might think, well, I did step 4, that's good enough, I'll just skip over step 5. But we really need, as Bill W. mentions, we really need the step 5 to keep us humble. But also sometimes when you verbalize something, it helps you to come to an awareness of something you may not have been aware of when you were writing it. But once again, you are applying your time and your effort to disclose this to another human being. You are also giving that human being a chance to be compassionate towards you, and that can in itself can be quite rewarding. The step 6 is we are entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now, you're just ready and you're willing to do that. In one sense, it's like, well, what am I really doing, or how am I applying this to my life? But you just have that desire. That is how it's being applied to your life. Very simple, but you're not going to hold on to it. And I believe a lot of times we hold on to certain things in our heart, and they start to weigh us down like we're putting them into a big backpack. So we obviously want to unload these things so that we can willfully hand these over to God. In the 7th step, we ask God to remove our shortcomings. So the 6th step is the willingness, and the 7th step, you're going for it, Now, the question you might ask is, well, what is the difference between shortcoming or a defect of character? And this one definition I found is a shortcoming is like a flat tire. So it's a shortcoming. Likely you have a flat tire by the way that your car is handling as you go down the highway. Now, a defective character is if you keep driving with that flat tire. I got a flat tire and I'm still driving. Or another example, maybe more practical, is let's say I have uh, I have an anger problem. I ought to go to some sort of anger management class or something. So that's my shortcoming. Now, my defective character is if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I'm getting angrier and angrier and I don't decide to like walk away. I just stay in that. That's my defective character. So if I was to write that down in my 4-step, I could easily say, well, when you start to get angry, just walk away or tell the person that, you know what, this isn't a good time for me to have a conversation. Now, another way is to look at the shortcoming and defects of character as the same thing. In step 8, you're going to make a list. So once again, you're back to the pen and paper. You're going to make a list of the people that you're going to make amends with. Now, as you write some of the people down, you recognize that you won't make amends with everyone, but you're willing to make amends with the people who you at least have a chance to make peace with, and where it's actually going to benefit you and, of course, the other person. And step 9, which probably has a lot of anxiety to it, is you're going to go and ask for forgiveness. Now, I've never done a step 9, although I have asked someone for forgiveness. My little nephew, sometimes he gets a little bit annoying. Now, I also get annoying, so I'm not bracketing him in that category by himself. But sometimes I have to go to him, and I know I have to go to him, and I have to ask for forgiveness. And sometimes he looks at me and is like, what do you need forgiveness for? He totally doesn't remember it. A typical kid, it's quick to forgive, quick to forget. But then sometimes he does remember, and I remember one time he put his hands by his eyes and he was about to cry because he re-entered into that moment. And I asked for his forgiveness. It was a way for us to make amends so that we can continue our life. But I could see that how important that was for him and equally how important that was for me. In the 10th step, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So it's kind of almost a daily thing that we're applying this to our lives, the little inventory, and then admitting my wrongs, whether it's to God or else to another human being, is just doing this on a daily basis. And it's really so things don't start to escalate. Oftentimes if I blow up in front of somebody, it's because something is escalated and I haven't dealt with it in a piece-by-piece manner. I just kind of let it build up, and then there's a big explosion. You want to steer clear when that happens, of course. In the step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to prove our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for God's knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out. So this is really focusing on our spiritual life. And so, if we're going to apply this step to our life, we have to just take time each and every day to pray. Now, it's not that you have to take a lot of time. You just have to commit yourself to that, to have it, as it says, that regular contact. Even if you pray 10 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at lunchtime, maybe 5 minutes before you go to bed, that's all you need to do, just to have that contact with God, and also that awareness to carry out God's will in your life, at least to the best of your ability. Now, the 12th step is you're going to serve. Now, what's very interesting is from step 1 to 8 is really focused on the person, focused on the addict. What needs to change? What do I need to apply to my life to become a happier person, to become a more content person? Then step 9 actually focuses on somebody else. And then we go back to, that daily inventory, and then the spiritual life, which is focused back on the addict. And then the 12th step is to serve. Now this is really what brings us purpose, but it gives us an ability to give back what we have received. I have received all kinds of assistance. I've received all kinds of graces from God and from others, and now I'm going to give that back to the community. And what we want to truly do is to find some way that we can give back in the program or elsewhere where we're using the gifts that we have. And so, I encourage you, if you're in the program, to continue to work the steps, because they do work, as I'm told, and I truly believe, because as someone who's involved in the program, I constantly try to work the steps as I become aware, and how a blessing it is to be a part of the program, and a blessing it is to apply the steps so that I can be a happier, I can be a more content person today, and only today, because that's all that's important.